Hello.
I sure hope you can hear me now.
I can hear you now. How are you?
Perfect. I'm fantastic. You're making me feel underdressed.
Oh, really? Oh, well, I wanted to look pretty for you, Quasi.
I love it. I love it. I'm just joking.
Nice to see you.
You too.
And I'm so sorry I was late. Yeah, just constant competing priorities, as I'm sure you can relate to.
I totally understand. Life of a business owner. I see the silver play button in the back.
Yeah. Yeah, I hit,
Congratulations
what
on
am I?
yeah,
Thank you. I'm
200,
sitting at about,
250K.
yeah, yeah. So that's been a lot of fun.
That's good. Are you in Mexico right now?
I am.
We're in Mexico.
The West Coast, just north of Puerto Vallarta.
Nice. One of our reps is in Puerto Vallarta right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he loves it.
Living and
Yeah,
working? Yeah.
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 He's working from there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. We're having a ball.
When did you move there?
We left Canada Day weekend, so July 1st, that weekend, last year, 2022.
Okay.
So it's been just over a year.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you miss Canada?
No.
I didn't think so.
I,
When,
I miss people,
yeah,
and I miss the mountains. I miss the nature, but the nature here is so spectacular that it makes up for it.
okay.
And I certainly didn't miss, the long, cold winters. I'm originally from Montreal, Quebec in the east, but I had
French.
been living in Western Canada, which we left Calgary, Alberta, and the winters there are brutal
Yeah,
in
no, I bet. How
my
close is that to
view.
Kelowna?
About 3 hours.
Okay. So is it in it's British Columbia, right?
No, Calgary is in Alberta, the next province over. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
the other side. Like we were 40 minutes, where we lived was 40 minutes east of the Canadian Rockies.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So Kelowna's on the other side of the Rockies.
I
Yeah.
was speaking to my wife. I was like, I really like the mountains more than I like the beach.
Mm,
Yeah. We
yeah.
live in Fort Lauderdale in Florida, and it's just flat.
Yeah.
Everything's flat. And summers are
Yeah.
brutal, and winters are bearable.
Yeah.
It's like 70 degrees and 80 degrees in the winter, and
Yeah.
summer's like 120. Like we're getting heat
Yeah.
waves every single day.
Yeah. 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 I know. It's intense. We're hibernating in the air conditioning, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's my life now in Mexico because
Oh,
it's
really?
August, very humid here.
Interesting.
And this time of year in particular. So yeah.
I thought Puerto
But
Vallarta was like was less humid. Like it's like California weather. No?
where?
In Puerto
Say that
Vallarta.
again. Well, I've only spent a little bit of time in California. I would imagine the weather's pretty similar. But I can't say from experience. Like I've
Hmm.
just traveled through a few
Okay.
times. Um, it's it's hot and humid. Not unbearably so as far as I'm concerned, but as long as you have air conditioning and a pool and a beach, it's manageable, right? I wouldn't want to do it without an air conditioned home and an air conditioned vehicle, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
As I'm sure you can relate to, right? So,
Yep.
um, yeah, but I swore I wouldn't complain about the heat when we moved here, having left the 8 month long Alberta winters behind me. I'm like, I will not complain about the heat, and I
You're gonna
don't.
love the winters here. So that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we just went through our first one, and the thing about missing Canada, like I said, it's the people more than anything. But
Yeah.
everybody wants to come to Mexico, so we spent from December through to April, literally, with a nonstop revolving door of visitors. They didn't
Okay.
all stay with us. Many of
Okay.
them stayed in resorts close to us because where we live, there's lots of resorts. And many of them stayed with us, but it was just a nonstop revolving door of people coming to visit.
Damn.
So,
Did you buy a
we
house?
learned not yet. We're debating between here and another part of Mexico, and we decided we take a year or two to get to know the lay of the land before making a commitment to a property. We're
Okay.
really happy where we are.
Yeah.
We live in a beautiful gated community on a golf course, 2 minutes to the beach. Like
That's sick.
it's
Does
yeah, it is
does your
really.
partner golf?
Well, yeah, more now than he used to. He
Oh
had
man.
golf, but not, as a lifestyle. But
Yeah.
now he's really into it because we,
Yeah.
step out, like,
You
yeah,
might as
he's
well.
on a golf course, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. No, I
yeah. So
started
he's
golfing
loving
ever
it.
since I moved to Florida. Ever since
And
I moved here, like golf and cigars.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And are you getting any good?
Oh, I'm actually really good. I broke 80 the other day.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
yeah. I started like 2.5 years ago, but I've just been playing like 20 hours a week. Like I'll go out 3, 4 times. A little too much,
Nice.
honestly. It's so like you just get really obsessed with it. That's the problem. Because
Yeah.
you think you can get good, and then you're just like, why? Why isn't it working? Like it was literally working the other day. Like it was perfect the other day, and now it's not. Why?
It's very psychological, isn't it?
100%. Yeah. I would
Yeah.
say it's like 85, 90% psychological because it's like how
Yeah.
you manage your time in practicing and how you practice,
Yeah.
because you can just get injured so quick if you overdo it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I found. But
Yeah.
how does it feel having a wealthy mind?
It feels really good, to be honest with you. It feels really good and oddly enough, very normal.
Yeah.
Like it just becomes this, well, it's just the norm
It's just the way
now,
to
right?
be.
It just, yeah. And of course, as happy as I am, I'm very much about, really residing in the present moment. Like
Yeah.
I am very conscious of that, but at the same time very ambitious and driven, so there's always of course the next level, right?
Yeah.
And and all that involves, right? So it's really this ongoing evolution and becoming that we get to play in when we really embrace these principles, right? So
Absolutely. Hey, I
yeah.
was it's funny, I was just looking through like the messages we had back in 2020.
Yeah.
It's so different. It's really crazy to think about because back then you were like, oh, I'm kind of doing 5 to 10K a month, and you were like kind of stuck with YouTube, what, less than 1,000 subscribers?
I think I would have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, at that time definitely, because yeah, I remember um specifically the beginning of 2020, I was sitting at 75 subs
Yeah.
when I made a decision to get some help in that regard. So it took a while for there to be traction and growth. So yeah.
Right. So, okay, let's wind back to 2020. Why did you what made you like, okay, so you were invested in, what made you get into online business? Like what made you get into this space doing coaching?
Well, that started long before 2020. So really, the honest answer is I really wanted to build the freedom laptop lifestyle,
Okay.
like period. Like that was the main driver.
Yeah.
So I into the digital world, trying to learn about digital marketing, affiliate marketing, network marketing as it related to social media marketing, and I was sort of rolling around in that world trying to figure things out
Hmm.
and trying to figure out how to create the freedom laptop lifestyle. Prior to that, I had sold residential real estate with Remax for 20 years in Montreal, and as such I had worked with a lot of life coaches myself.
Okay.
So in the background there had always been, I'd been told for years you should be coaching, and it had always been there sort of in the background. But the truth is it started with, I just want to be able to work from anywhere with my laptop and a Wi-Fi connection. Like
Mm.
that concept was just like big to me, right?
Yeah.
Very appealing. So it started with that. And at a certain point, I was working with a mentor in 2017 to improve my marketing skills.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and said, I had just given him 5 grand US that I barely had to give at the time. And he looked at me on a coaching call in front of a large number of people and said, what are you doing in affiliate marketing? You're a coach. You need to be coaching. And I'm not working with you until you get on path, on purpose, and on mission and do what you need to do. Right. So he sort of gave me the kick in the butt that I
Wow.
needed to overcome the limiting beliefs. It was like, oh, okay. And I knew he was right. I knew he was right. But then it was like, well, what does that even mean? Like I'm a coach, but like, and then it was, the journey of putting all of that together. So it's been quite a process of becoming the me I was always intended to be, is the way that I put it now, because there's this certain element of my work where I'm helping my clients do that, right?
Right.
Becoming the you came to the planet to be, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
So what do you do? Like what do you coach currently? Or what have you been
Well,
coaching?
I'm most well known for codependency and narcissistic abuse healing and recovery.
Okay.
Uh, there came a point in my journey where it was, it was very clear that I had to get very specific in terms of who I served, how, and what exact problem I solved for them. And the most painful problem I had ever solved in my own life was this. And I knew I had mastery because of what I had come through and just the whole journey and where I was. I knew I had mastery. So I knew if I had to be specific, because up to that point of making that decision, I launched the signature program around this in 2018. So up to that point, I was sort of very, just trying to figure all of that out, right? Who am I as a coach and what does that mean? And then, that led to codependency and narcissistic abuse healing and recovery. So I've been running a digital transformational coaching program called the Freedom Class, specific to those issues, very successfully since 2018. So yeah, and since Reality Mastery, with significantly more and more success. So
yeah. So what made you mentioned that, like, you were doing a lot of these different things. You knew initially, because I think this is so important to see, like, how this journey of clarity evolved. You were doing so many different things, and you knew you had a vague idea that I want to live the laptop lifestyle, and you pursued it. And so you jumped into affiliate marketing and digital marketing, and you knew you wanted to do marketing because marketing would help you sell, go online, live the laptop lifestyle. And then you had kind of like, as you pursued that, it's interesting to see, your environment gave you feedback that you should go into the direction of coaching, which is different from just marketing. So then you were like, okay, if I go into coaching, I'm going to pick something that I resonate with, that I've mastered, and that I'm passionate about. Right? So doesn't that seem kind of crazy, like how that evolves?
Unless you've actually lived the journey, you can't even articulate to someone what that is, the process of becoming through all of that, right? And figuring it out, even though there's no end to the information, and coaches and marketers, marketing to marketers out there.
Coaches coaching coaches to coach other coaches.
Right? Exactly, right? It's quite a thing to because it's, I think one of the reasons anyway, one of the primary reasons it's such a big deal is because in order to be any good, you've got to be coming from, like you said, passion, but also purpose. It's about digging deep and, why am I here? Who am I meant to serve? And for me, although the answers were quite obvious, there was still a fair bit of digging around all of that. Also, I think that sometimes we could go in a number of different directions. So how do you know which direction is the right direction, right? And for me, that was a lot of internal work to figure that out. Yeah.
What I saw in you though, Tamie, it's like you always trusted in your ability to figure it out. Even through moments of doubt, you were just like, okay, I'm going to take this leap and do it. And this is like the common quality that I see in all, like, everyone who's become successful. They're like, hey, I don't know. And I don't know if I should invest in this coaching, but I know that I got to find the answers and someone else might know it. And I think I have a faint feeling that this person might know it or that person might know it. Fuck it. I'm just going to take the leap and try it out. Let's see what happens. Like, you're not so, like, you look at the fear of failure dead in the eyes and you're like, you know what? If it happens, it happens. If I fail, I'm going to learn something. But eventually you operate from the fundamental assumption that success is going to happen. And therefore it does. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, working with everything that comes up inside of you as you make those decisions, like at a certain point when we first connected in 2020, I was hovering between the 5 and 10K mark, but internally I was becoming the person who was, my first goal at that point was to consistently hit 20K months, right? I think when you and I first started talking. So it was really about embodying that person, like, who do I have to become in order for me to call that experience out of the ether, and understanding, the metaphysics of, there's a certain amount of understanding around, how that works, of course, but dealing with the limiting beliefs as they come up, dealing with all of the mindset stuff, the feel, really being willing to be in touch with what's going on inside of us, because it's so easy to run from, ignore, bypass, especially when you're in the digital world,
Yeah.
if and to be disconnected from all of that, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
If you don't mind sharing, I would love to know why you got
Yeah.
into this, because you said you had a story, you overcame that narcissistic codependency issues. If you don't mind sharing,
Yep.
like how did that happen, like in the past, and like what really made you become so passionate about this, and what makes you so good at this?
Well, I don't believe it's the only reason I'm on the planet. I think there's an evolution. So I
Yeah.
believe that there's more to the story, but to this point,
Yeah.
and why I'm most well known for that to this point, I believe why I came to the planet. It's why I was born to the parents that I was born to. It was why I was born into the family of origin that I landed in, and why I, to a large degree, had the experiences that I did. So, fundamentally, my parents I was born in 1969 to, a 17 and 21-year-old who had no business having children. They both came
Wow.
from, generations of alcoholism, poverty, and extreme levels of abuse, like extreme levels of abuse. So the family, my parents, and both sides of the families were, my language today, which is very accurate, were emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually very sick. So I was the first grandchild born into that system,
Mm.
abandoned to my father's grandmother, to my father's mother, my grandmother. Thank God she raised me, because the alternatives would have been much worse.
Mm-hmm.
But it meant that, you know, the fundamental theme of my upbringing was I was cast as the family scapegoat at a very young age in a very narcissistic family. So there was not just abandonment and neglect on every level, although my physical needs were met. I was raised by my grandmother on her welfare check. So it's not like, there
Right.
was a lot of resources, but I was never hungry. There was always a birthday party. There were Christmas presents under the tree. I had a roof over my head. I was bullied in school because, of course, she dressed me funny in secondhand clothes and cut my hair funny and,
Right.
whatever, right? All the things. There's a lot about your story that I relate to, in
Yeah.
terms of some of the challenges we've experienced and what that created, what that fortified in us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I was bullied in elementary school and by certain members of my family of origin. So there was emotional, psychological, physical, and sexual abuse growing up as a child.
Damn.
My grandmother was fully incapable of protecting me in the ways that I needed to be protected. And my parents were absent. They were busy off doing their own things. So a very sick family of origin with a lot of their own unresolved issues had unfettered access to me. And that made me a really good target for a lot of things. And I believe I landed on the planet with certain things in terms of high empathy and certain frequencies. And, it's usually, in my view, opinion, and experience, the person who's cast as the family scapegoat in a sick family system and is narcissistically abused starting at such a young age, which sets us up for the patterns in adult life,
Yeah.
is usually the person who carries the most light in the family. It's usually the person who calibrates at a different frequency. And it's
Mm.
not a value issue. We all have value. This isn't about special. But the person who is going to be selected and targeted in that fashion is more often than not the person who sees the dysfunction for what it is a truth speaker, is going to call it out, is going to push back, is going to rebel, and also might have some qualities in terms of empathy and compassion and love and kindness and care and concern that other members of a narcissistic family don't possess. And that's
Okay.
very triggering for people like that. So all of that was, a decades-long journey that ultimately led me to the place of, who am I here to serve and how? And that was, the one area where I knew I could have the most impact.
Hmm.
And I have. Like, it's shocking to me, how this has turned out. 5 years of running this specific program. I've recently launched another program, but the Freedom Class specific to those issues, I've had a couple of dozen 20 plus year veteran family psychotherapists come through my program for
Wow.
help with these issues. I earlier this year worked privately with a doctor of psychiatry out of New York. I've had other PhDs in psychology come to me for help with these issues. And what each one of them report to me is that what I teach was not part of their training. What I do that gets results was not part of their training. They
Okay.
don't know how to address these issues for themselves, never mind their clients. And
Right.
that's not to say there aren't tremendous therapists out there, because there are.
Right.
And I'm not a clinician, I'm a life coach specializing in these issues. So it's two different lanes. And I tell my clients that all the time.
So,
Many of
so
my clients
you don't
work with
have
a
like a,
therapist.
do you have like a actual training in therapy or like degrees in therapy or anything? No, right?
None whatsoever. What I do is I teach everything that worked for me. So by the time I was in my early 20s, I knew something was really wrong. I mean, I had been a teenage runaway. I
Yeah.
was drinking and drugging alcoholically from the time I was 13. There was a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I started on a quest for answers in my early 20s. And therapist after therapist after therapist didn't know how to help me. And that journey, I never gave up. I was hungry for
Mm.
wellness, right? So Tony Robbins environment, workshops, seminars, life coaches, therapists. I mean, you name it, 12 step. I went down every avenue that I could,
Hmm.
no stone left unturned, and ultimately found solutions that did actually work. And I realized that what was wrong with me. I was trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with me. What was wrong with me was what had happened to me. And I found solutions that worked
Okay.
and worked fast and well. And eventually that led to me creating a program where where I teach everything that worked for me historically, and it works for my
So
clients.
what's the big transformation you provide your clients?
With the Freedom Class program that I've been running since 2018, it is healing and recovery from codependency, narcissistic abuse, and adult child syndrome. So those three specific issues, and there's overlap there with
Okay.
all three, but they are three distinct lanes, although there is overlap.
Let me ask you this. When someone goes through the kind of experience that you've been through or suffers those three things, what are the symptoms that they face that let them know that, oh, this is what I'm going through. This is why this is happening. What are the symptoms that kind of they face that help you identify them as like, oh, this is what's happening?
Well, there's a lot of ways that this can manifest. Not least of which a pattern of attracting empathy impaired, toxic emotional manipulators
Mm,
who not only hurt them, but then blame them for the hurt they cause. So I don't actually I used to, but I don't anymore work with anyone under 40. What I've learned over the years is that I do my best work actually with women over 50, although I do work with some men. And we've decided 40 plus is our benchmark. And the reason for that is what I learned in the first few years is that until you reach a certain place, you probably aren't ready to do the work that, very few people in their 20s and 30s are ready to do the kind of work that I do with my clients in my program. That's just my opinion based on my experience. And the first, again, to answer your question, the first sign for many of my clients is recognizing, okay, there's a pattern going on here, which is very much what my experience was too. And although I'm not responsible for their behavior, I'm the common denominator. So I can break up with or divorce or walk away from
yeah.
however many, but the exact same thing or worse shows up in the next person, different body, different face, same pattern. So what's going on with me that's the pattern that I'm attracting. So that's
I
one of the
love that you
main.
say that. because that's what I've been noticing happens with, like, because I've worked with over 1,000 clients, and you know, a certain type of person keeps attracting a certain kind of circumstance. What's the common denominator in all of these same circumstances that you keep attracting?
Right.
It's hard to face that in the mirror. You know, it's hard to look in the mirror
Yeah.
and be like, hey, there is something that I'm putting out there that's bringing this certain circumstance into my
Yeah.
life. And I've also noticed a lot that people who are kind of like people pleasers, they tend to, and you're the expert at this, they tend to attract a lot of narcissists. It's like they kind of almost, even though initially the relationship isn't kind of like that, it evolves into that over time. Do you find that that happens?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a match there, right? So, you know, fundamentally, the way that I see it, like at my lens, is the experiences that we had in the first 5 to 7 years of life set us up with subconscious programming, subconscious patterns. And we go out into the world in our adult lives seeking certain things,
Mm-hmm.
but subconsciously it's like a, you know, psycho-cybernetics, right?
Yeah.
It's like a heat-seeking missile, seeking what is an emotional, psychological, spiritual, energetic, vibrational match to the unresolved wounding and trauma from the first 0 to, you know, conception, really,
Yeah.
to, you know, 7 years, right? So
You think it's
if
0
I
to
have
7 years?
that's
Like
correct.
even because I always thought before 4 years old, you know, you're just like, you can't even form memories. Like you don't have conscious memories. It's all like completely subconscious. So you think even those experiences
Well,
affect?
it's all subconscious. What
Mm.
we're absorbing for the first 7 years from conception, what what you're marinating in for 9 months in your mother's womb
Yeah.
is programming you, right? So it's all
Mm.
subconscious, and it's not about conscious memory. It has very little to do with conscious memory. You know, we say 95% of the game of life is subconscious.
Yeah.
Well, some will say actually it's more like 98.5% of the game of life is subconscious, right?
Yeah.
Very small percentage is conscious. So, you know, we may consciously want a healthy relationship with, you know, a romantic partner, a spouse, or anyone else. Because if the pattern's playing out, it's usually not just romantically. It's showing up in you know, all areas of our life, or a number of areas.
Bosses, friends.
Neighbors, you know, yes, in-laws.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, it is. Yeah. So, you know, I'm the common denominator. So you know, by changing what's going on inside of me, I'm not necessarily changing them, but I am changing what is compelled towards me and what I am compelled towards. So as I shift, the empathy impaired toxic emotional manipulator who feels entitled to hurt me and blame me for the hurt they inflict, the hurt they cause, tend to fall away, and space is now made for much healthier to show up in my
Hmm.
life. But it's all internal, right? So I'm not sure if I answered your question there. We kind of went, but yeah, it's what we receive in the first, you know, 5 to 7 years of life sets us up with that programming. So we go out into the world consciously thinking we're looking for this, when the big driver is the wounded inner child who is still trying to get their needs met from mommy or daddy and or whatever
Looking for
primary
approval.
caretakers, whoever the primary caretakers were,
Yeah.
and therefore you're going to be compelled to, until you resolve those issues and learn to become the generative source of love and validation and self-esteem and all the things for
Internally
yourself.
generated rather than seeking it externally.
Exactly, you're going to be compelled towards people who are an emotional, psychological, spiritual, energetic, vibrational match to the original family of origin wounding and trauma,
Wow.
over and over and over. And in my case, because I grew up the way that I did, I didn't have mommy and daddy.
Yeah.
They were absent, although there were some experiences there, more with my father and my stepmother. But I had a whole fleet of folks who were, you know, had access to me in ways that they probably should not have, and had influence over me and effect on me in ways that they shouldn't have. So when I got into dating and adult relationships, I went through a period where I attracted an external representation of that one and 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 that one. And when I did my work, one of the things that we do in my program, one of the many things, the ways that we go after this, when I did my work, I was able to connect the dots with regards to who these people were representing externally with regards to my unresolved wounding and trauma specific to those people in authority from my childhood, heal those wounds one relationship at a time. And today I am in the happiest, healthiest, most loving, amazing marriage imaginable.
Wow.
Because I was able to do that work, right?
So, okay, what made you realize, like, what happened that made you realize that, wait a second, this is what's happening, this is what's going on, and I need to solve this?
A few things. So mainly that there was a pattern that was playing out in terms of one relationship would end, I would eventually find myself in another dating scenario, which may or may not turn into a relationship, but there was this ongoing pattern. I'm like, look, this should not be hard. Let's say at the time when I started finding solutions that worked, by now I'm in my early to mid 30s. But, for a number of years, I'm like, I'm a successful real estate agent. I have, a home, a cottage on a lake. I'm in excellent shape. I've got, on paper, I've got all the things, right?
You got it
But
all.
I cannot get this area of my life to work to save my life.
Mm.
Like, and after, you can blame them all you want, and certainly we're not responsible for how, the shitty way they show up, and the things that they do. But when you have a revolving door of those experiences, and over time you're noticing that they're getting worse. Like by the time I was getting serious about doing the work, I was attracting full-fledged sociopaths. Like I had 2 near misses with what were without question high spectrum antisocial personality disordered individuals. I was smart enough to be in and out inside of 6 weeks, but there's a saying in 12 step, left untreated, these issues get worse, not better over time.
Yeah.
Well, these issues get worse, not better over time, left untreated, is not just for, substance abuse issues. That goes for untreated codependency, untreated adult child syndrome, right? That goes for those issues as well. So what was happening with me was, there's another way of putting it, the universe will send you a pebble and then a rock and then a brick wall, right? So it's that progressive nature. So that was terrifying for me.
Yeah.
As smart as I was, as capable as I was, with all that I brought to the table, that it was getting worse, not better, was terrifying for me. So I was just willing to do whatever it would take to get to the, including remove myself from the dating arena altogether, which is what I did. And I just worked on myself, and with every resource that I had available to me and every direction that I was pointed in terms of try this, do that, I went at it like a full-time job, like my life depended on it, because I felt that the quality of my life definitely did depend on it.
Okay. So if someone were listening to this that's kind of going through something similar, they're seeing a same pattern of relationships, I guess for you, what's one big 80-20 kind of tool or realization or something that you had for yourself that made an immediate or like a very quick shift in you?
Being willing to remove yourself from, you got to take yourself out of the game so that you can repair the relationship with yourself. My definition of codependency is a breakdown of the relationship with self that then extends to maladaptive ways of relating and behaving to others. The way that we address that in this arena is the wounded inner child healing and recovery work. There's other things also. There's lots of other things.
Yeah.
But if I were to say one thing, heal your wounded inner child. That is the game-changing stuff. We are an outside in perspective society and culture, right? We're looking outside for the validation, the evidence, the approval, the love, the acceptance, the safety, the security, all the things. And we've been sucked into an inverted reality.
Mm.
And we need to walk out of that inverted reality and meet ourselves and start operating from an inside out perspective. And in order to be able to do that, a lot of people need to be up here instead of down here
Ah,
and operating out there instead of in here, because as soon as they go in here, they start to feel the pain of the untreated, wounded inner child. And that's excruciating for many people. But the
interesting.
only way to heal it is to feel it. So, you know, that is that. If there was one thing, that would be the thing, in my view. There's many other things that can be done, but
I
that's the
like
big
that.
one.
You said a lot of people who go through this need to be in here rather than in here.
Think all day long, right? As long as I'm up here, I'm safe. But you can't think your way out of these issues.
Yeah.
You know, people will binge watch my YouTube videos, and I give a lot of strategy and, you know, information, and it helps validate them and their experience, and they're not crazy because they've been so gaslit, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, they question their own perception of reality. They question whether or not they're the narcissist, right? Because they've been so messed with psychologically and so gaslit. So they're gathering the information because it feels good, it's validating.
Yeah.
But it's like 3% of the game. Information is not how we heal. We don't heal in our heads.
Yeah.
We heal by getting out of our heads and coming down into our body and making conscious contact with all
Transformation.
those. Always. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I love
Yeah.
that. So, okay, one interesting thing I wanted to know was a lot of people nowadays, I feel like they throw around the word narcissist and gaslighting. Like
Yes.
in modern day and age, like my wife will get really mad at me one time and she'll call me a narcissist. So, what does it mean to be a narcissist or to gaslight someone? What does it really mean?
Great question, because I agree. These words are thrown around with people having very little
Yeah.
understanding or comprehension of what, what the implications are. So you don't have to be a doctor of psychiatry to determine whether or not you're dealing with someone who has a destructive narcissist personality pattern. What that means is, by virtue of your personal experience with an individual, you can tell that there is empathy impairment, a lack of conscience to some degree, if not entirely, an overinflated sense of entitlement, depending on the flavor, because not all narcissists are created equal, not all codependents are created equal. It doesn't always manifest the exact same way. So there are different flavors. There's a grandiose narcissist, there's a covert narcissist, there's inverted narcissism, there's different flavors. So, you know, a covert narcissist does not in any way, shape, or form present as grandiose, quite the opposite. But they are just as destructive and have just as distorted a perception of themselves, you, the world, as a grandiose narcissist, and just feel just as entitled. So the earmarks are empathy impairment, lacking in conscience to whatever degree. There's a spectrum here, right? So these are
Yeah.
not black or white issues. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like being
On
pregnant.
or off. Like, yeah. It's a scale.
Selfish and self-centered to the extreme.
Okay.
Completely self-absorbed. Uh, Even high functioning, you know, and there are, you know, many who are very high functioning in life. Some of them hold great positions of leadership around our world, right? Full blown, what I would call super sociopaths, right? So whether or not they are able to function is not the point, but there is a colossal level of emotional immaturity. Like, you are really fully dealing with, no matter how high functioning they may be, whether they're grandiose or covert,
Yeah.
regardless, there's a level of emotional immaturity there that is glaring.
Do you
So destructive. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, you mentioned like selfishness.
Yeah.
What's the opposite of narcissism? Like the qualities that, you know, the people who you work with, they attract narcissists. What's that called?
Uh, Empaths, to use very,
Okay.
yeah. So there's, you know, it's people of a high empathy nature.
Okay.
And when you combine that with untreated adult child syndrome and therefore untreated codependency, so a person with codependency who
Yes.
is also high, because narcissists are codependent,
Yeah.
they require a target, right? They require a target. They require someone to siphon from
Yeah.
and dump onto, right? So that's a form of codependency also. So the codependency can go both ways. But when you combine an individual with, a certain level of naivete, a highly empathic nature, and codependency,
Yeah.
that's a lethal combination in terms of being a narcissist lunch, in terms of being set up for being exploited in many ways.
Do you think empaths are also selfish?
Well, they certainly can be. And untreated codependents will have narcissistic traits.
Hmm. Because I always
So,
thought like that people pleasing quality, it's like
yeah.
you need validation to feed your ego. And so you seek it outside, whereas like the narcissist, they also seek it outside, but in just an inverted way.
Well, what you're speaking to there
Yeah.
is, and I say this to my clients all the time, and they get it because we have the space to go into it deeply. But you know, what you're speaking to there is the codependent traits that an untreated the narcissistic traits that an untreated codependent will have. The narcissistic
Hmm.
traits that an untreated codependent will have. So
Okay.
uh, here's the thing. This is the best way I know how to explain this, because it's hard to wrap your brain around it all, because our tendency is to want to put things in neat little boxes and think in black and white.
Yeah.
But these are not black or white issues. There's a continuum, there's a spectrum, there's different flavors, there's some
Right.
overlap, right? So we're all narcissists. We're all narcissists.
Yeah.
In
That's what I
particular,
figured.
until here's the thing, but we're not all malevolent.
Right.
We're not all lacking in empathy. We're
Right.
not all devoid of conscience. We don't all walk around with a feeling of entitlement. More than anything, we're not all walking around, with malevolent intent. But
Right.
a person with a destructive narcissist personality pattern absolutely is.
Right.
Now, whether that's always directed at everybody or just selectively, whether they have selective empathy for their children or their golden children, but not for the scapegoat in the family, right? That's the difference. The malevolent intent driving it. But at 4 years old, naturally we are all little narcissists. The
Yeah.
entire world revolves around us. We're fully entitled. We're selfish and self-centered. We're emotionally immature, right?
Yeah.
And we ought to be at that age. The thing is some of us
Stay there.
evolve beyond that and develop
Yeah.
to where there is healthy self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, if we've been nurtured adequately, we understand where I end and you begin.
Mm-hmm.
So we develop what's called healthy narcissism. In fact, I have a video on this subject on my YouTube channel to help people unpack this. There is such a thing as healthy narcissism.
Mm.
So we develop a healthy sense of self. We are boundaried internally and externally. We have appropriate levels of self-esteem. We have appropriate levels of empathy and compassion and care and concern, and never to our own detriment. We have those things for ourselves, and therefore we can have them for others in a healthy way. The untreated codependent doesn't have a solid identity, doesn't know who they are, doesn't know where they end and others begin. They have all kinds of empathy, but are walking around with a self-love deficit disorder, as I think Ross Rosenberg coined the term self-love deficit disorder, which is very accurate in terms of untreated codependency. And in that state, they're not a destructive narcissist, but they have underdeveloped narcissism, so there are narcissistic traits, which is why, while they're being targeted, they'll say, how do I know I'm not the narcissist? Well, are you deliberately going out with malevolent intent? Never. It's no part of who I am,
Mm.
right? So you might have untreated codependency that manifests in some narcissistic traits, but you are an empathic person.
So it
So
always
let's
comes
treat
down to intent.
the intent, the level of conscience, the level of empathy. And other signs are, like I
Entitlement.
said, entitlement. Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
could talk about this all day. This is
I
very interesting stuff. So, okay, let's fast forward. You solve this problem, 2018, you start your program, but now you want to go all in on business. In 2020, what made you take the leap to join Reality Mastery?
knew that there was, I mean, I've been rolling around in personal development and spirituality and metaphysics and quantum physics and all the things
Yeah.
for a long time. I'm a little bit older than you, right? So I've been rolling around in all of that stuff for a long, long time. And I knew that I had subconscious things holding me back from hitting the next level with my business.
Mm.
So, I'm solving this problem, I'm doing it well. Shocked to me, I'm actually even working with therapists. Like, obviously what I'm doing is working, I'm getting results, but I can't break that barrier to the next level
Mm.
in terms of consistent earning. And I knew that the game was internal and it was subconscious.
What made you
And
realize that the game was internal and not like an external tactic? Because I think that's like a good determinant, because a lot of people think like, oh, it's an external thing. I got to find the next strategy, the right strategy, and so they keep looking for that. But I feel like
because
you
I
have
had
this
all the
like acute.
strategies.
Mm,
Oh, because I had all the strategies. I was doing all the strategies. I had
yeah.
all the strategies. So it was, I mean, I knew because I've been rolling around in this stuff long enough that I know this stuff well enough that I knew, but
You
it's
have
very,
you have
it can be
awareness.
difficult. Sorry?
So one thing I notice about you, Tamie, is like you have this awareness of like
Mm-hmm.
you can notice when you're going through patterns and you're like, oh, okay, this is what I need at this point. I can see
Yeah,
this pattern happening. I can't let this happen
totally.
again. Like that first
Yep.
time that happened, when you overcame that the very first time in your life, you noticed that there was a pattern of relationships happening. But now in your
Yeah.
business, there's a pattern happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very
Totally.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
So yeah, fundamentally, I knew that it was an inside job. I had all the tactics and strategies. I was being mentored by the same people you were being mentored by. I mean, we've been mentored by some of the best in the business. I mean, it doesn't get better than some of these people. And and because I'd been mentored by these people, I knew that it wasn't going to be dancing on TikTok that was going to be the big breakthrough. Like, I knew that, and I'd been in business for a long time. I just knew that
would you have done it though? Would you have
you,
danced on TikTok?
every now and then I wonder whether or not I shouldn't be on TikTok because I know so many influencers who are doing so
Yeah,
well with it, but I'm like, do I really need to go there? And I don't, right? Like, I've gotten really good at, where
focusing.
is my time going?
Yeah,
Yeah. And if I'm going to do anything more with the socials, which we've got some plans here for this fall, I think there's better places for it to go personally.
mm,
Will I ever be on TikTok? I don't know,
mm.
but I knew I knew that wasn't the thing. I had the strategies, and the tactics and all the trainings that I needed. It was an inside game. And I think that when you're self-aware enough, you can actually feel yourself hitting that invisible ceiling, right?
Yeah.
Like, I
You
had
just have
read
to be
Psycho
intuitive
Cybernetic.
enough to notice.
Sorry?
You have to be intuitive enough to notice.
Yeah, which is, we all have that capacity. It's a function of just making the decision to get
Yeah,
still often enough, consistently enough, right? And being willing to pay attention.
yeah.
And I've worked really hard at that for a long time, right? So there was that. And honestly, you and I were connected in another community, and
Mm,
I had enough exposure to you that I knew that what you were doing was working, and I knew that I could trust you.
mm.
So that was the decision. Yeah.
Okay, so what resonated with you in particular about like what we were doing and like in about reality mastery that made you think, okay, that's the thing that I need to break the internal barrier? Because there's so many different kind of ways to work internally, you know?
Um, it was my understanding that you had come up with a system to reprogram the subconscious specific for entrepreneurs who are wanting to take their business to the next level.
Yeah,
And my problem was exactly what you were solving at that time.
got it. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
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 I think focus is where it comes down to it. Like you focus on solving one problem for one person or a kind of person, and then it makes you get good at it. Whereas if you solve different problems for different people, then you get all scattered. And I think you mentioned that you kind of learned that when you're growing in your journey with your own coaching, like getting down to, hey, only 40 and above women, ideally 50 and above. Yeah. And I feel like doing that kind of thing also makes people trust you more, where you're like, hey, I'm willing to work with people only when they're 40 and 50 and above, and women mostly, as opposed to, everyone. Because when you're like working for everyone, there's like trust is less.
And it's just a lot harder. Everything's harder,
Yeah.
right? You can't be all things for all people. I mean, men get mad at me all the time in the comments of my YouTube channel because I mention the fact that, I'm a life coach specializing in these issues for women.
Yeah.
And I have all kinds of clients who are men. You're welcome to apply. You're welcome to, take my program if it resonates. It's a self-paced version of the program you can buy directly off of the website. And it works. It gets amazing results. But the reality is the person I get the best results with and the person I enjoy working the most with, we have figured out, right?
Yeah.
And that's what works, and it works really, really well. So sorry guys, it's like I said, you're welcome to apply. It's not a hard no, but yeah, the emphasis is definitely, leaning in one direction.
Yeah. I certainly got a lot of that when I switched from just doing general, like, oh, I'll teach you how to manifest anything, to, hey, I actually enjoy working with entrepreneurs and business owners, because I am an entrepreneur and business owner, and I had to go through all of these challenges, and this is actually what helped me overcome those challenges. So, that's why I made the switch. And I get a lot of people who are like students, like in other areas of life, relationships especially, who are like, hey, why don't you work with people with these kind of problems? And again, you're welcome to apply, and if we can help you solve the problem, we will. But
Exactly.
if we can't, I'll just straight up tell you, like, hey, I don't think you'll be a good fit, because we typically work with XYZ kind of client, and this is the problem we solve. So okay, let's so you joined Reality Mastery 3 years ago. When did you hit your first 20K month?
Oh, great question. Not too long after that. I could look and tell you exactly through my tracking, when I would say within 6 months. It was before the end of that year. So 2020, I don't know whether or not you remember, but there was a lot of like upheaval and crazy things going on. In
Oh yeah, I remember.
particular, if
You were messaging me.
but well, I mean, like just in terms of what was going on the planet externally. So we won't go down that rabbit hole, but there was a lot going on. And so the reason I say that is because when I pulled the trigger on the program, I believe it was spring of 2020, it actually took me some time to be able to get into it and get focused on it and do it, right? So I don't think I did it. I definitely didn't do it perfectly initially because frankly, there was just so much distraction.
Yeah.
We were very concerned about what was going on in Canada at the time. And that, while running a business, was a lot. So all of that to say, it took me a little while to get in and get consistent with the work, but it was certainly within 6 months that I had my first 20K month. And maintained it, and then grew from there. And then last November, I started hitting 50K months consistently, with the exception of 1 month. We had a dip 1 month, but yeah. And I'm speaking in Canadian dollars, so that's not quite US. There's a difference between Canadian and US, but those were my goals. Those were my numbers. And
hey, as long as you hit your goals, I mean, and you're happy, that's all that matters at the end of the day. Okay. So what was the thing that you took away from the program that got you from 5 to 10K a month, staying stuck at that barrier, to 20K a month?
I think anything, I'm not structured or analytical, right? Like that's not my zone. So like you teach in the program in terms of, balancing the poles, and right. So I have become like, at one point I was far more introverted than extroverted, and I'm very balanced there, right? So as I've done the work, I've become more balanced in terms of structure. So I guess, where I'm going with this is anything that gives someone like me a very structured step-by-step system and process of pulling out of me the clarity that I need,
Okay.
so that that is the focus, is serves me big time, right? So I feel like I needed that structure and process. And I'm going to say the thing, if I had to pull one thing out of the whole program, it would be the manifesto, the personal,
The
the
self-mastery guide.
manifesto that, yeah, that I read daily. And I have fallen off the beam with that. I have not been a perfect student for sure, but when and mine's like 2.5 pages long typed out. So I don't know if that's, longer. I think that might be longer than what you
Mm,
suggest. But I can tell you that when I get up from reading that in the morning, in
yeah.
particular, I'm different.
Nice.
Like it shifts me on it, so of all the things, like it's all of it because of the clarity that it pulls out of you.
Yeah.
Like you really crystallize it, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you honestly, I love it so much that I teach my own version of it to my clients
Yeah.
in my new program,
I love it.
because it was so impactful and they know where I got it, right?
Right.
It's the simple stuff I find
Yeah.
that has the biggest impact. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for everyone, it's different things. A lot of our clients say like, "Hey, when I learned about confirmations, everything just fell into place. Like I just felt,
Yeah.
I could do anything because I'm just confirming every little thing and building up and snowballing up that programming in my mind." Others say, the self-mastery guide and the manifesto, it gets me started
Yeah.
in the day really well, and like I feel like that ideal person. So it's been
That's right.
amazing for me to see you went from someone who literally had, less than 1,000 YouTube subscribers doing 5 to 10K a month. Then
Yeah.
you became a different version of yourself, 20K a month. Then you went to 250,000 subscribers. Now it's a big deal. Like a lot of people are watching. Like this, like your content is reaching, if you're getting 50, 100,000 views on your videos, like it's reaching like small cities. You're impacting small cities, which is kind of crazy to think about. And now you're doing 50K a month. So what was the transition like in identity, I suppose, when you went from that version of you? Because when you're experiencing it, like we talked about initially, like what does it feel like to have a wealthy mind? I don't notice it. But when you look back, I'm sure you think about the predominant thoughts and feelings you had at the time when you're making 5 to 10K, the predominant thoughts and feelings you had when you're making 20K, and now when you're hitting 50K. So what were the three different versions of you that you can think of off the top of your head?
The three different versions of me,
Yeah.
or what that journey was like.
What that, either or.
Okay. Um, for me, there was, in spite of the fact that I have always been quite fearless,
Yeah.
I grew up in a family where, like I'm just not intimidated by much. Nonetheless, internally, there was a lot of fear that I had to grapple with. And and much of it not rational. Like it's not about rational fear, right? But it's irrelevant. It's, whether it's rational or irrational fear, you still, if you're carrying it, you have to address it. So there was a lot of fear, and it was fully about, worthiness, like owning worthiness. So, there's a parallel to the work that I do with my own clients in
Right.
terms of, the wounded inner child healing and recovery work. So really, you know, embracing those aspects of myself that didn't feel safe making a lot of money,
Mm.
didn't feel safe having a lot of money, that was terrified that they would be mad, even though and I know exactly who they are,
Yeah.
haven't been in my life for some of them decades, some of them well over a decade, and
Yeah.
will never have access to me again.
Yeah.
There was an aspect of me that um, I had to work with to overcome fear. We throw the words limiting beliefs around a lot, but I mean, hey, that's the name of the game. Like you
Yeah.
really have to get intimate with what those limiting beliefs are and work through them
Yeah.
and reprogram them, which is what your program really helps us do. Um, yeah, overcoming fear and the worth and the value. My tagline from, the time I started my coaching practice is know your value, unlock your freedom. It's been
Yeah.
that since 2017. And it was really about, embodying the valuable woman whose work is of high service, believing
Yeah.
like just that whole process, right? Does that
It's
answer
like,
your question?
yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like it's already within you, but there's a barrier that's blocking you from realizing it. You're just lifting it. Because I like how you describe, like, it's bringing the clarity out. Because it's already within, just hasn't been, it just hasn't surfaced to the level that it needs to surface to in order to be applicable into this material physical realm. It's latent.
Exactly. And transmuting the things that don't need to be there anymore, that don't serve you.
Yeah.
There may have been a time where that fear served me in terms of,
Survival.
keeping me alive,
Yeah.
right? But I don't need it anymore. So I can put that down. But there's an aspect of me that doesn't know that until I love all over her enough and work with her long enough and
Hmm.
do the internal work long enough. And long enough just means, with some consistency, right? It
Right.
doesn't actually take that long. It's just a function of being devoted and consistent with it,
Yeah.
right? To where, yeah, you peel back the layers and you get to the valuable and what's cool, and this is what I've always loved about anything personal development, is that and spiritual, and the overlap that this is, in my view, right? Is it's an ongoing, never-ending evolutionary journey. Codependency recovery is too.
Yeah.
Narcissistic abuse healing and recovery is too. It's an ongoing, never-ending, lifelong journey of becoming more and more of the truth of who you have always been.
Right. If you don't grow,
Right?
you
Yeah.
stagnate. Yeah. There is no
Some say you die. Some
yeah.
say you die.
Yeah,
It's just,
there's really no like middle ground, just coasting, because you're either
yeah,
always fighting to grow or
yeah,
like striving to grow rather, or
yeah,
you're not growing and you're dying.
yeah,
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 that's amazing.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
what's next? When we seen the big 100K month?
Well, that is a goal that I'm working on. So, yeah, I mean, on one hand, there's, some attachment to that. And I'd like to see that happen before the end of the year. And I'm
Yeah.
working on it. On the other hand, I've learned to hold on loosely,
Yeah.
wear the world like a loose garment, right? So the
Yeah.
intention is there.
Yeah.
And I do my part every day.
Hmm.
And I know without question that I am actually, my internal work is actually beyond that. So the next step is six figures, but I've got my eye on triple what I'm doing now. So $150,000 months,
Yeah.
right? But that's a direct reflection of who I'm impacting and how I'm serving. So my primary focus, like right now, I've just recently launched another program called the Ascension Class, which is
Okay.
like the next level of growth after the Freedom Class,
Hmm.
where we do my version of identity shifting and reality creation, wealth consciousness expansion. I've wanted to teach on money for a long time, so I've
Yeah.
incorporated that into this new program, and the end of self-sabotage patterns. So for folks who are coming through healing and recovery from the issues that we've
Right.
discussed, this is like the next level of growth, right?
Well, it's what you
So my
mastered.
focus,
It's what you mastered.
exactly,
You went through the
totally,
first
totally,
stage, and now
exactly.
you've been through the second stage. So,
Exactly. It's the journey, right? So the Ascension class launched a few months ago, and we're having a lot of fun with it. And it's really about dialing that in for maximum service and impact for the
yeah.
right person. And I know that as long as my focus is there, that the big months are coming because they're a reflection of the service that I'm putting out there, right?
Right.
So yeah,
It's a
yeah.
reflection. Yeah, it's all a reflection of who you are and how you're showing up. When you unlock your value, you unlock your freedom.
Exactly.
I love it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love it. Well, Tamie, thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. So great to see you and great to chat with you.
You too.
I'm
And
like so grateful for you and all that you've taught me. Like it's been a big part of the success that I've been able to create this last few years and ongoing. So thank you very much, Quasi.
I'm really glad to hear that. I'm really glad to hear we were able to make an impact. So where can people find you?
TamieMCoaching.com. So that's TAMIE, M as in Mary, coaching.com, or Tamie M. Joyce on YouTube.
Okay. So what I'll do is attach your socials in the description, and
Okay,
people will be able to click and find your stuff. But yeah,
perfect.
thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Take care. Stay cool and beautiful.
Bye bye.